Calling all nerds!
Hey, get over here. He's calling all nerds.
Oh, jeez. Here come the nerds. It's time to talk to the interested and interesting.
I was wondering when the nerd would come.
And here's your host, Mike Thayer. All right, let's get this podcast underway, shall we? It's time for Calling All Nerds. I'm your host, Mike Thayer, welcoming you to Calling All Nerds, yet another episode where I'm talking to the interested and the interesting. This week I am joined by Emmelyn Thayer, who is my eldest sister and a wonderfully talented individual. She is a stage actress, a dialect coach. She is a theater director and a dramatic arts professor. So she's in California. She's over there in San Diego right now. Has been for a while, and has some wonderfully entertaining stories that come from the acting world. Now, I wanted to talk to her for many reasons. Number one, she is, as I said, highly entertaining and a brilliant person and very funny. And I love talking to my sister. Number two, and I think everyone will like that conversation. Number two, I have not had a representative for a part of the nerds, as I call to all nerds, as the title of my podcast says. I don't have any representation for the drama nerds. So my sister is here representing her people on the podcast and talks about a lot of stuff. We kind of run the gamut from kind of the Me Too movement, even a little bit, to kind of the importance of storytelling and what that does to someone's psyche, what that does to their relationships, and then just all the entertaining and funny stories that it generates. So I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation. What have I been up to? So this podcast is coming out a little bit late. It might be a day late or half a day late. I've experienced a few technical difficulties. Technically, I stayed up till 5 a.m. last night. That was the technical difficulty. Trying to finish the last draft of the Uncharted Lands, Book 2 in the Epic Adventures of the Techno Wizard. It is done. I actually might go back and just tweak a couple little things. You can never quite stop tweaking. Art is only abandoned, it is never finished. So, yeah, I think it turned out awesome. You're always worried when you start a project if you can kind of replicate the magic of your prior project. Passage to Avalon, Book 1 was a cool book. In some respects, I kind of felt like I caught lightning in a bottle. And I thought there was just so many cool things about it. And you sit down and you're like, okay, how do I follow that up with a sequel that's gonna take the story in the right direction? I mean, I know generally where the story is going anyway, but take it in the right direction, expand the story enough without letting it get too out of control, but you want to amp up the humor and the action and the drama. And so, yeah, and when you always start, you're kind of just like, do I even know how to write a book? I know I've written them before, but do I even know how to write it again? And is it going to work again? Is the magic going to all kind of fall into place? And I honestly, I mean, it's hard to say because it's my baby. You don't have to take my word for it. There's other people that are going to tell you their opinion on it. I think the book is incredible. I think it's hitting on all the spots I wanted to hit on. I think the action is way amped up. The monsters are cooler. The bad guys are cooler. I introduced some really great, awesome good guys. Some behind the scenes stuff. So you'll see that the book takes place at this place called Station 15, which is this station along this big giant wall called the Rampart that sort of holds back all these monsters. And Station 15 is one of the stations along this wall that maintain the wall and protect, fight the monsters. Station 15 is based off of Trailer 15 at my work. So a lot of the individuals there are inspired by the individuals that I worked with at the refinery, and I think it just makes it live and breathe and feel a lot more genuine than otherwise would have. So, yeah, I love the book. It's kind of described as part of it is Fablehaven meets Helm's Deep, and another part of it is kind of Gladiator, Thor, Ragnarok for kids. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. Anyway, December 10th it comes out. I'm super excited. One other quick thing. I start off the podcast by talking about how I haven't been to very many of my sister's productions. I say like 2.5. I wanted it to come off like I was a horrible little brother that wasn't supporting my sister. what it sounded like listening back to it was that I thought her stuff was boring. So it's not. She's brilliant. I was a horrible little brother and didn't support my sister enough. I just want to cement that before you go in and listen to the podcast episode. With that said, we're going to go and listen to the conversation that I just had with my wonderful and talented sister, Emmelyn Thayer. All right, so for this week on Calling All Nerds, I am joined by the talented and beautiful Emmelyn Thayer Freitas. Emmy, as some know her, is an actor, a dialect coach, a theater director, and dramatic arts professor at San Diego City. I don't know why I put 3 syllables in San Diego. Wait, there is 3 syllables. I don't know why I put 4 syllables in San Diego College and Mesa College. She specializes in theater history. I have to say certain words in a certain way when I read your bio. It's not. I can't just read it straight.
I got it.
Voice, speech, musical theater, and acting for stage and film. As an actor, Emmy has worked with several Tony Award-winning directors and have played leading roles in over 30 productions, of which I have probably seen 2, maybe 2.5.
Well, I appreciate
I don't know if I was, if I left during the middle of one of them, as in high school. We kind of had a pact. I think Emmy had 4 brothers that all played football, so there's no way she was going to go to all of their games, and we probably should have gone to more of your plays. I remember a couple. I remember I saw Christmas Carol at, I think it was at the Hale Center Theater.
Yes, Hale Center did that.
I'd only been there once, and I remember, I just kind of remember the setup a little bit. I think I saw a couple in high school. What was that one that the mom has a picture of you holding a little girl? Like hugging you?
That is college. That was To Kill a Mockingbird.
I think I saw To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Did you leave halfway through?
No, I think I was moved thoroughly. You received your MFA from the Old Globe, USD Graduate Acting Program, and are a recipient of the Craig Nowell Fellowship.
Yes, thank you for saying it in that voice.
Yes, Craig would be proud.
Like, he would be proud. He passed away a few years ago. He's an amazing guy.
So what's weird, this may come, so we're going to talk about a lot of things. So the podcast is called Calling All Nerds.
Right.
I'm writing this up.
Honored. I am a nerd.
Yes, so I'm writing this other book where this kid is he's a 4th grader, he's trying to map out like the social structure of school. And he has like the jocks and the girly girls, and then he has this big section that he calls nerds. And the way he defines nerds is people who can be made fun of for what they like. You're not going to make fun of like a jock because he's going to, whatever, popular kid or a cheerleader. But there is this huge swath of people, the people into Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, even gaming, the band nerds. But there are definitely a group of the drama nerds.
Yes.
Right? And I haven't had anyone on from sort of representing the drama nerd contingent, as I call to all nerds.
Represent my people.
Yes, represent your people. And no one is better to represent their people than my eldest sister, Emmy.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about a little bit about what you can do with a degree in theater and kind of your history, your war stories. I love war stories, of which I know you have many. I have heard some of them, but not all of them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. This might sound weird to you.
Okay.
I always talk about you as an actress, and I sort of brag about you as an actress and a dialect coach, but when I talk to you face to face, I don't. It's like somehow I like compartmentalize the actress sister Emmy and then just my sister. Like I don't, because I haven't seen you in your element a lot. You know, how, like we would go see Dad in his element every once in a while. He'd be teaching, or he'd be like, talking in front of a big group and be making jokes. And I'm like, I haven't seen this side of Dad. But it's like 80% of what Dad was.
Of his life.
Yeah. And so I just don't, I see movies and TV shows of people up there directing people and teaching, crazy intro acting folks. And I know that's part of your life, but I look at you now and I'm like, I can't, my brain doesn't bridge that gap for some reason.
Yeah, no, I hear you. When I went to a play a few years ago with Stephen, our brother, and Amy, his beautiful wife, and there were a lot of people there that I knew. It was kind of a reunion type situation. So Amy and Steve were sitting in their seats, and I was just saying hi to everybody, my theater folk that I hadn't seen for many years. And I came and sat down, and Steven said, "Wow, you are a whole different person."
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I've seen that.
I have not seen, and I think it surprised them. I don't know what I was doing, being
just in your element.
Really animated. I'm quite introverted. I mean, I'm a hobbit. I think my husband and I and our daughter, well, she's a lot more social than we are, but I can be social. But I'm much more at home.
So do you have to turn on the acting portion of you to be social?
Sometimes I do, unless I'm with people who I really am close with or really enjoying. But I find that I can act like I'm really interested and excited talking to someone, and then it's exhausting, and then I need to go.
That was all an act. I'm actually going to go home and cry now in several hours of recharge.
Not that I don't enjoy being around people, just but no, when I'm with people I really enjoy, then
it's easy
about it. Mm-hmm.
So you said you had a story about trying to convince one of your brothers. Was this Paul? I'm imagining this was Paul or James.
It was Paul. I wasn't going to name names, and not that it's an offensive story about him at all, because it's not. But so we have our brothers have all majored in, I would say, very practical things, right?
Right.
And Katie's in ways that she graphic design, and so I chose acting. And Paul has been known to tease his siblings and good-natured arguments, and he was just basically like, "That is a worthless. What are you doing? Like, what? There's this." And because I was like, "It's hard work." And he's like, "It's not hard work. I'm over in the library studying for 1,000 hours for this test on, mechanical engineering or whatever he does.
Whatever Paul does.
Theater people don't understand those things." And so, and he was like, "No, well, you don't work hard." "Yes, all these rehearsal hours and, it's memorizing lines. It's hard." And so one day he came over to the theater department to find me. I don't know, back before cell phones when, people had to go and look for people.
Find other people.
Yeah. I can hardly remember what that was like. But anyway, so he showed up, and we were in this room. I was with my class. I don't remember what class it was, some theater class. Anyway, there's a window in the door. And that day we happened to be working on animal imagery. So Paul looks through the window, and it's just like, I don't know, I'm like crawling on the ground like a cat. Like, got friends like, "Caca, caca,"
Paul just nods.
He's like, yep. Suspicion's confirmed. This is worthless.
So you actually do, I see the depiction. It's kind of like when I talk to people about drinking alcohol, or drinking wine. I'll go to a business meeting and people will be talking about wine. My knowledge of alcohol and wine is basically what I see in TV.
Sure, yeah.
And so my knowledge of how these classes go, intro to acting so this stuff is actually how it goes. It's what I see on TV.
You really do run around and.
So is that just trying to get your inhibitions out? How is that useful?
Yes. Trying to get outside your comfort zone, to engage your imagination. That's like improv games. I start every class, no matter what it is, with improv games. And it's really wonderful to see what happens, because I used to teach extended. When
someone becomes a peacock, it's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
to see how they blossom as a person.
This is what I get from my brothers when I'm trying to be serious. All right, listen, little brother.
Oh, that's great.
I used to teach continuing education, so I would teach these classes, and it would be like, I just never knew who I was going to get. It was fascinating. It was through UCSD, so I had retired colonels and Navy SEALs and businessmen and stay-at-home moms and foreign exchange students, all this stuff, all these people, and I would get them together and we'd start playing an improv game. One example is, you're in a circle, and you have to try to you have somebody do like a simple movement and a sound,
Yeah.
and then the person next to you has to copy it exactly, and then the person next to them has to copy that person exactly. So it changes. So if somebody kind of giggles or laughs or goes, what? You have to add that into the thing.
Oh, okay.
As it goes around. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And it was kind of amazing to see these people who were all sort of, they're doctors and, lawyers, and they don't do this kind of stuff on a regular basis or ever in their lives. But by the time we took a break, they were all laughing and chatting with each other. And theater has this remarkable ability to, unlock this creativity that we have to stifle that, right, as we grow up. I mean, I use the example of being a kid. When you're a kid, you just say, oh, now I'm a cat. Like Vivian was a cat for about half a year. My daughter, who's 8 now, she was a cat, and her name was Sasha, and I had to like put bowls of water on the floor for her. And she didn't. It's not like she sat down and was like, okay, now I will become a cat. And what are the cat-like things? She just was like, now I'm going to be a cat.
Right.
And we do that. I think all of us did this as kids, right? And or playing with, like with you guys, playing with your He-Man figures or whatever. You just make up. But we don't. As we get older, people say to us, and be quiet, sit down. That's too much. Especially for me, too much.
Right.
Like, calm down.
Well, that's interesting because I talk a lot when I go to school visits. I talk about somewhere along the lines when we grow up, we forget how to be awesome. Like that's why I've installed the Excalibur in my front walkway or my hidden, door in my basement that leads to, I tell people when I want to go get Christmas decorations or food storage or sleeping bags, I have to pull on Michelangelo's nunchuck to gain entrance to the storage room. And for years, there's this big Captain America shield on it. And for like 6 months, Jill's like, every time I open the storage room door, the Captain America shield comes down and smacks me in the head because she wasn't opening it correctly. She never told me.
Opening it correctly, yeah. Jill, you're a long-suffering wife. She's
like, you don't open it like that, Jill. You open it like this. It's like you should have told me Captain America was assaulting you every time you had to go get the Halloween decorations. But like, and I tell kids, I was like, I should give them a couple examples of stuff I have around my house, and eventually they pick up the answer to my questions when I go, and why did I put this here? And I was like, because it's awesome. And I don't need any other reason. And so many people are like, now, Jill, like, I can't believe you let your husband do this. And she's like, let my husband do this. Like,
right.
It was funny because when I proposed the idea, like, Jill, we need to put a sword in the stone in the front walkway. She was like, okay, I guess so. And then I bought the sword and it showed up. And then I got busy with a bunch of stuff at work. And I hadn't installed it yet. And Jill's like, I kind of want to see what this sword looks like now. Like, get going, Mike. Like, what weekend are you going to do this? So Jill was like pushing me to do it. And in the end, it just looks awesome.
It does look awesome. I completely agree with that. I think I talk to my students about how we lose our sense of play, our ability to just have fun for fun's sake. I mean, we do stuff. We go to movies. We all have our hobbies, right? But just that playing with other people, having fun and getting outside your comfort zone. And I've seen some really remarkable changes in people for the better, like that benefit their lives, not just as an actor, but just as a human being. So
yeah, because you have an interesting profession. It's kind of like my brother-in-law Garrett, he's a seminary teacher. So it's like probably very easy for him to keep up on reading the Bible and the scriptures because it's his job to do it, right? So my job has a certain, well, not anymore. My former job has a certain decorum that you needed to keep. There's a set of rules, either written or unspoken, that you must act in a certain way in meetings. And so you're sort of taught and conditioned to bottle all that up.
Right.
And whereas your profession, to some degree, is like, okay, let's strip this down. Let's expose this part of us.
Right.
And I think that's probably why theater people are a lot of fun. I remember the parties. I remember two things about the parties. How much laughing and noise there was from the basement and how many leather jackets there were on the front bench.
It was the early 2000s. There were a lot of leather.
I remember vividly. It was night. It was kind of dark in the front hallway, lifting and counting. I think there was like 21 leather jackets. I remember it was in the 20s.
I didn't think about that in terms of leather jackets. I do remember when was this? Probably the late 90s, when I was first starting college. My best friend from high school, Sarah, she's a jeans and t-shirt kind of girl, beautiful girl, and I was sort of experimenting with my theater style. And so I cannot believe I wore this, but it was this silky suit that was double-breasted, and it had like green and blue stripes, right? And then I had this felt hat, the felt hats. I don't know if you remember. It's like green felt with a big flower on the front of it, and like these big clip-on earrings.
Do you have a photo of this?
No, and it was terrifying. And I have to give props to Sarah for being willing to be seen with me. I remember us walking across campus, and I do remember the thought going, people would see us together going, oh, those two people have nothing in common. Because she looked like
currently in a play. Is she walking between scenes?
It was ridiculous. I think I still have that hat in Mom's closet. But I mean, she, bless her heart, she loved me and she loves me, and so she was willing to be seen with my crazy theaterness. But,
so
yeah.
Your friends over the years that have stuck with acting or not stuck with acting, where have they all popped up? Did you see them? I know a long time ago you were like, oh, I'd see people on like CSI Miami.
Oh yeah, I have lots of friends who get killed, in Law and Order. That's the first big step.
Or
right?
molested people in CSI Special Victims Unit or whatever.
Right. Yeah, victims. A lot of victims in all those shows. We always, even Steve, because my husband met me during the second year of graduate school, and a lot of the actors who came through there were also working in film and TV. And so he even started going, oh my gosh, that's so-and-so. Oh yeah, we talked to him at a party, and now he's being mauled by a bear or whatever.
You've made it when you've been mauled by a bear on CBS.
I have a friend who was killed by a bear. I don't know if it was CSI. He broke his hand in the first, I think the first day of shooting, because the bear they had like bear paws, and I don't know, he broke his hand somehow. But he didn't want to tell them because...
Yeah, that's your shot.
Yeah, and so he just didn't say anything, and he came back the next day, and his hand had swollen up to like 4 times its natural size or whatever.
Some director's like, we can use this. We can...
Yeah. So they were like, why didn't you tell us? And then when he told us all to watch it, because, the email goes out or the text goes out, like, here's my episode. He said, watch, they never show when I'm on the morgue, like the slab, because the character dies. They never show that hand, they always shot it at an angle because his poor hand. But that's showbiz. The show must go on. Now I have a couple friends from college who have really done incredibly well. My friend Mireille she was on The Killing. She's in this new Hannah series they're filming. She's married to Alan Ruck, who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was Cameron.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and they have 2 beautiful kids, and she's just an amazing person all around, and we all knew she was going to do big things. She left college before she even graduated. I think she bought a one-way ticket to New York or something. It's that story you hear that makes everyone think, oh, I can do that too, but no one ever really does it.
Right.
She's like the 1%.
Falsely inspired hundreds of people to abandon.
No.
do
I
not
don't
follow.
inspire anyone to do anything impossible. But and she started working in theater right away. Got nominated for a Tony Award. Now she's done all this TV. And then Kevin Rome's the other friend who was also at BYU. We also, all of us knew he'd make it big. And he's in Lethal Weapon, the TV series now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he have a sitcom? I remember seeing like a pilot way back when, didn't he?
Did. And then he was also in Desperate Housewives for a long time. He's on Madam Secretary. So those are the 2 I can think of who, people would see their face and go, oh yeah, I know who that is.
Wasn't on World War Z, the wife of Brad Pitt? Yes,
you're right. That's the one I was talking about. That's the woman I was talking about before. She's Brad Pitt's wife, yeah. So she had some fun stories about that, filming of that. And now there's
sequels coming, yeah.
They're still waiting. Yeah, I think it's going to happen. So
I always tell people that is the movie that is the most dissimilar from the book of any movie I've ever seen in my life. It has nothing to do with the book other than the title. But she did great.
And I think they did because they had a lot of trouble with that film. I think
they had to go back and do a bunch of reshoots, and they changed the whole ending. I guess it's because usually when you hear that, the movie's doomed, and then they redid the whole, and it did great. And they're like, it actually worked. It actually resurrected the show.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. But no, the thing about Kevin and Mireille too is that they are the greatest, most down to earth people. I mean, you see them at a party and it's just like we're back in college, And then I have lots of other friends who pop up on different series, but they're all working. I mean, it is, and everybody knows this, I think, about acting, but when I talk to my actors, my young actors, I see the light sort of die in their eyes a little bit when I talk about how hard it is.
Yeah.
They come to me after auditioning for 2 shows. Oh, I didn't make it, but I worked so hard. It's so discouraging. And with all the love in my heart, I say, buck up, little campers. If you expect it to be fair,
Right.
or there's a trajectory, there's no trajectory. You can be working nonstop for years and then suddenly never work again. And most of the actors I talk to say they're always worried that their current job is their last job, because there's no fairness.
That's so weird.
Yeah, even actors. I talked to an actor who'd been working in theater consistently for 20 years. He never had to get a regular job because he was just going from show to show, which is, that's incredible. And he said, yeah, I'm always worried that my current show is going to be my last one, because there's no guarantee of anything. People don't care.
Odd. There's some similarities, I guess, to writing books, because some people will write books forever and they'll never make it. They'll never get picked up, or they get rejected a bunch. Like everyone's got this, I've got a long list of rejections. And I've just been doing it part-time until just recently. That is, that's tough. Now, as far as, what about I know there's a couple other famous people from BYU, like Aaron Eckhart. He's a little older than you, right?
Yes, he was graduating when I got there as a freshman. And Neil LaBute is another one. He's written a bunch of film scripts. They tend to be very dark and about relationships, and but I have friends who knew them, but I didn't know them.
And Napoleon Dynamite, I forget his name.
Oh yeah, John Heater.
John Heater. Yeah.
And
you were in a short film with him, weren't you? I remember seeing it. Yeah.
Him and his twin brother, who's also.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would it be to be John Heater's twin brother?
I know. And they do look a lot alike.
That would stink. He probably gets that all the time. Hey, Napoleon Dynamite. It's like, yeah, okay. You probably just answer to it after a while, kind of like I answered to Steve after a while. Teachers would be like, hey, Steve. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Steve.
Sure. Why not?
I'm so glad he went full bald. And I've been able to maintain
has.
some sort of hair, although it's going on me. Not that everyone calls me Steve anymore. If only I could have grown a beard and he could have gone bald in elementary school. It would have made my life so much easier. No, I'm not the bald one. I'm the one with the beard.
I know.
Don't go to recess, Mike.
I'm fine. It's just accept it. Well, it would have been great. Dad started losing his hair when he was 19. Young. That picture of him, he's pretty receding hairline, and he's young.
I've actually only held on to what I've held on to because I've taken pills for 3 years.
Oh, really?
When I saw the writing on the wall, I was like, I got to start taking Propecia.
Oh.
Because I'm right at the edge. This right here, as I talked in the first podcast, is kind of thin. But I was like, if I lose a bit more, if I lose this, forget it.
It's just going to go.
Yeah, because you can't, even now it's weird. But I'm kind of right on that line. I just said, if I ever lose more than that, you know what was one of the big, this is ridiculous, but my little avatar, he's got more hair than me. But my little avatar, I was like, I don't want to redo my avatar. I was like, maybe I should start taking Propecia.
So you don't have to redo your avatar.
Yeah. And then
Great.
And then I want to spend $30 to redo my avatar. And then then I moved to Billings and then had to shave my beard because I couldn't have it in the plant because of breathing air. And so I had to shave my beard. So then I was like, I don't look like my avatar anyway. But
I'm impressed your beard is so close. I would expect more of a Gandalf type situation at this point.
I started to grow. It gets a little bit scraggly once it grows. Some people just grow when it's nice, and I would imagine Stuvie has a big, nice, kingly beard. He's got a regal beard. Stuvie is Emmy's husband. He's got a kingly beard.
His name is Stuvie.
Yeah.
And his name is Steve, but Dad always thought his nickname was Scooby.
Until he died? Or did we ever? We never corrected it?
And I would think, did he just say Scooby? And that went on for a couple years. And then one day he asked me, he's like, why do you call Steve Scooby?
We don't. You do, Dad.
Well, Dad I was hard of hearing, and
Question is, why do you call Steve Scooby?
Why do you call him Scooby? But then he goes, well, I like it, and so I was like, we're just gonna keep it. It was
no reason to change it. Stuvie is actually he has a passing mention in my next book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in the Techno Wizard, this kid's stranded on this other planet, other dimension world. but he still has cell phone connection back to Earth. So he's got a buddy who's kind of his guy in the chair, so to speak. And I was like, what else could this person do? And I was like, what they could do is they could make, because the whole world is watching this kid stranded in this alternate world.
Okay.
So he's going to have a lot of uses for custom built apps and technology. So Sam, the protagonist guy in the chair, ends up working with some of the best app developers in the world. And the head of these app developers is Stewie.
No way!
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So I thought that was pretty good.
I get to tell him that. That's so cool.
So he's like, yeah, Stewie gets a couple mentions.
Nice.
I don't describe the guy or anything, but he gets a couple mentions in the book.
Yeah, because Steve he has nothing to do with theater, which is
No, no, he does not.
he has an appreciation for it, but yeah, no, he was an aerospace engineer. Now well, I'm sure he still is in his heart an aerospace engineer, but he's a game developer.
Yeah, he took a big leap. Well, he had the skills
Yes.
to make the leap. It wasn't like me where I was just like, I'm going to be a writer. And just kind of
he has a particular set of
he does.
skills. It does Stewie.
So for people who spend their life imagining that they are someone else, how does that play in their psyche?
It's interesting talking to our brother Stephen, who's a psychologist,
Right.
because there's a lot of crossover there. And I think that I talk to my students about this, that it can be a bit dangerous. There's, I think, a cliche of actors being unstable, or abusing drugs or alcohol or whatever. And I think that there's a risk of getting addicted to that feeling because acting isn't real life, it's concentrated life.
Right.
We don't go to a play. We don't want to watch someone go through their morning routine or a movie.
3 minutes of brushing his teeth.
Right. We don't want to see that. Or if we do, it's a montage, right? And we've got, and I also say that I wish that I need a montage. Like when we're moving into a new house, I need a montage. I need some 80s music, and I need to get, 7 days worth of stuff done in about 3 minutes.
Right.
So there's this rush, this high that you get when you're on stage and everything's going well, or on film, I would imagine. I mean, I've done a few films, but I'm a stage actor, I feel. That's where I feel most comfortable, and because I like taking the journey from beginning to end. Film is all stopped up. You could show up and they're like, well, we're filming your death scene today, and then tomorrow we'll film the beginning of the movie. And that's a remarkable set of skills. I don't feel like maybe I could get better at that, but I don't feel like that's my milieu, as it were.
Oh, yes. Well,
Yeah. I'm just going to throw words like that out.
Why not?
But, so I think that, you're on stage with someone, you walk on stage with someone you've never met before, suddenly you're in love. And, and it's all very instant, and it's all very intense. And, I have young actors, or really any actor, it feels good to yell and scream, on stage and get to do things that aren't acceptable in the real world. I remember one rehearsal I was in at the Globe, I was playing romantic, this guy and I were romantic leads, and I had like shaken his hand basically out. That's all. It's like, hi, my name is. We walk into the rehearsal room, and then the director goes, okay, you walk toward each other, and then you just start kissing. It was, and in the moment I just thought, this is really weird.
Yeah, do you ever get those where like, this is this weird like social contract we make.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is okay because we're putting on a show. We're pretending. We're professional pretenders. So this is fine. Everyone agrees this is fine.
It's fine. We're just going to make out in front of you. We don't know each other at all, and it's going to be great. And we're going to do that every night, And he was married, and I wasn't at the time, and he was wonderfully professional and could not have been, nicer and more professional, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, I have stories where things have happened backstage to me, or, to people I know, that have been pretty awful. And it's because there's these blurred lines.
I was going to ask, yeah. I'm sure people abuse I guess we saw that. The whole, like, Me Too movement started from freaking Harvey Weinstein dirtbag, but, like...
Sure.
So I would imagine there's a lot of blurred line space, and then there's people that just abuse the crud out of that gray area, where like, that's not gray at all. Like,
right.
You installed a trap door button on your office chair. That's probably
not so gray. Not so great.
But there's probably tons of that gray area.
Oh yeah, and it's a little when you're in the world, things happen and you go, that was weird. And then afterwards, like for me, years removed from some of these situations, go, oh my gosh, that was
really bad.
Okay. But in the moment, I was like, oh, that's a little bit weird that he, grabbed me backstage and said it was for his character.
I gotta get in the mode, baby. Like,
that was, I didn't like that.
It was a magazine, pal.
It's just this showbiz. But now with this new Me Too movement and, people are just a lot more, I think women, especially women, are feeling more empowered to talk about these things and say, this is not okay. And certainly men too. I mean, it happens across all gender lines and everything. But to just say, yeah, no, I'm going to stand. I mean, when a couple things happened to me that really that should not have happened. And I was scared, I guess, to go talk to anybody about it because I thought, well, I don't want to make waves and, rehearsals are so busy and I don't want to be, especially I was Mormon in a place where there weren't a lot of Mormons and I felt like maybe they'll just think I'm uptight and I just need to go with the flow. And now, of course, I mean, talking to any friend, whether they're Mormon or not, they would go, that's so inappropriate.
Right.
It doesn't matter. But I just felt, I don't know. Anyway, so getting back to your original question, there's a risk there of becoming, of thinking that relationships or connections are there that aren't really there, or they're not really based on anything that's real except for chemistry. I've been told, oh, you have amazing chemistry with this guy. Well, what does that mean? I mean, people like to watch us together, but does that have any bearing on, outside of the theater, what kind of relationship we could have,
So I guess the two follow-on questions would be, one, have you actually ever seen it where people are romantic leads and then end up having a relationship afterwards and are together? And then the second question would be, so how does that affect your actual relationships?
Those are good questions. Yeah, I've seen it. I've heard of a couple of, of couples. There were a few couples in grad school, actually. And I don't know that they necessarily played opposite each other, but they met in grad school as actors and ended up getting married. So that definitely happens. And you hear about that. I mean, there are old Hollywood stories of two people starring in a film together and at least having an affair. If not getting married, then at least having an affair.
No, we'll take that,
Yes, at least. Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants the Bella and Edward Cullen. What are they? The Kristen Stewart and what is that? When they fell in love off
She's
screen.
Just a clumsy girl, and he's just a stalker who wants to kill her. Suck her blood. It's so romantic. He sits and watches her sleep without her permission.
Everyone wants that.
Love it.
Just to wake up in the middle of the night. Oh, thank you for looking over me.
Yes.
I'll just go back to bed now.
I was talking to a friend of mine about that, and I was like, leave it to a Mormon to find a way to make even a vampire wait to have sex until after.
She did it.
She did. They waited.
That's part of the plotting.
And then he killed her, and anyway. So yeah, I have issues with that book. But yeah, okay. So let's see. First question was that about.
Yeah, whether they get together, and the second question is, how does it affect your relationships, your real relationships, or are you trying to start them when so many of the relationships are concentrated and forced on stage or in film?
Yeah, I know when I was in graduate school, so it was just 7 of us, and you're just doing plays all day. You're in a play, you're understudying another play, you're in acting classes, and it's you can't get a job because it's a full-time thing. And I remember going to do anything normal, even to the grocery store, and just sort of feeling like, this is really boring, because I was so accustomed to being in this concentrated life. And so in terms of relationships, I think it's different for everybody. I have friends who are married to other actors, and they just understand it's part of the job. But I'm sure there's jealousy. I'm sure there's, I'm sure seeing your spouse making out with someone on a screen or stage, it's never going to be like, oh, great, So I think it depends. I mean, that guy I was talking about before, who the director was like, make out. I met his wife. She wasn't traveling with him. People don't usually travel with their spouses when they're in the theater, which is another hard thing in theater because you're away, and in film, you're away from your spouse or your partner for a long
Yeah,
time.
that's the one profession where when you go in a business trip, you actually tell your spouse, "I'll be making out with someone else when I'm
Every
on the
night,
business trip,"
every night.
like clockwork.
Yep, in front of 500 people. But I met his wife. She flew in for opening night and stuff, and she was so wonderful to me. She's an actor too, so she gets it. Just it's part of the gig, and she was like, "You guys were great together," which is always sort of like, "Oh, thank you. I'm making out
That's
with
so
your husband."
sweet. That's so sweet of you to say.
But no, like in the theater world, like that was very gracious of her, and again, he was so professional, which isn't always the case.
Right.
It's not always the case. Nowadays, though, I'm hoping that people feel more, and I talk to my students about it too, that more empowered to speak up if something happens, that makes them uncomfortable, or they now have like full-time intimacy coordinator or consultants. I can't remember what it's called, but it's
What qualifications do you have to get to be an intimacy
I am
coordinator?
not sure.
This guy has coordinated some of the greatest love scenes
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
Like film, it would just be like, okay, just go for it. And you think about, sex scenes, things like that.
Right.
I'm sure stuff happens that people aren't comfortable with. So now they have these people that they hire to come onto the set and say, okay, what's required? Let's go through it, which I think
Why not?
it'd be helpful,
Yeah.
Somebody supervising it, because I know even as an actor in grad school surrounded by friends, I told friends about what happened to me, but I didn't feel comfortable going to the higher ups, and if I'd had an advocate, I think it would have been more comfortable,
Yeah, I guess they can play that role as well. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The evolution of the love scene.
Intimacy coordinator. I'll have to put the exact name. I can Google it right now.
I want that on a resume. Intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, they're calling them in for stage work too if there's a particularly intimate scene. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you are now teaching. I am. When was the last play you were in?
Oh my goodness. Vivian was 6 months old, so it was about 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you just put on a play, right? Mom was.
Yes, I just co-directed a show, so that just closed, and yeah, I'm starting to branch out into directing, which I really enjoy. I still miss acting terribly, but it's, at least for my little family, it's not super conducive to family life because you're gone every night, and then 2 shows on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, usually 8 shows a week. And I have a lot of friends who are parents and do it, and they have, an army of people helping them and babysitters and family. And I think if we lived really close to family, it would be easier. If we were in Utah, maybe. I miss it so much. I've been starting to think, hey, maybe I could start auditioning. But just because I'm saying start auditioning, that doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean I'll ever be in a play again, Right. It just means that I might start going and doing a 2-minute monologue in front of folks and saying, please like me, So, but we'll see.
So what's next? What's next? Is it directing another play or?
Let's see what's next. And as an adjunct, I don't have. I'm a generalist, what they call a generalist. So I teach lots of different stuff. So right now I'm teaching a voice and speech class, and next semester I'm teaching history, and I am directing. They have a festival of student written plays. And so as a director, you get to choose which one you want to do, and then you work with the student on it and cast. That's pretty fun. So that's what I'm doing next semester, in between being a mom and wife.
So I would imagine through tryouts are sports. What do you go? Auditions.
Sure.
Your first string.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine through auditions that you can get rid of a lot of the bad actors. But have you ever had to work with someone who was just a horrible actor? Because this is the thought that I always put myself in the situation. Whenever there's a really, really bad actor on screen, I always imagine the director just going like, all right, take 2, and then they get like a take 2, and then they just eventually go, well, I guess this is what we got. We're just going to work with this, and then you just kind of have to make it work. Like, what is that? Have you had that moment where you're like, oh, I'll try this again, and then provide a little coaching, and then be like, oh dear. Okay, well, I guess this is what we got.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting because people can be really great auditioners and then not be good. Like you'll see something and go, oh wow, they have a lot of potential, and then they get into the rehearsal room and you go, that's all they had. You know what?
It's like if they practiced
like,
one song on the piano and mastered that one
they're
song.
like, that's amazing. You know, and all you can play is, for
They
a
had
week.
chopsticks down pat. They can't
So
play
you
anything else.
definitely on stage with those people who are just dead in the eyes, or I was on stage with a guy once who skipped. He never really learned his lines. He had a lot of lines. He had the lion's share of the lines in the show, and I didn't have as many, but it was only like a 4-person show. And one night he skipped, I'd say about 11 or 12 pages of dialogue.
What?
And didn't realize he had done it. And I didn't have any lines in the scene, and so I just sort of was looking at him going, when's he going to realize that he just skipped 12 pages? And then I saw it hit him, and then he tried to, because he had skipped over all this exposition that absolutely was necessary for the audience to understand, and so he tried to backtrack, and there's nothing I could do. I mean, I sort of tried to ask him leading questions.
Don't you remember the time when?
No, that's the thing. Like, do you recall? It seems to me that once we were speaking, and like, the worst is when you have to improv.
Once we were speaking, as in last time we did this play, and you had said something different.
Yeah, last night around 8:35, you were not at this place.
So did you was it just irrecoverable?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I really did want to just stand up and go, hey, everybody. Okay, you're not going to understand anything from this point on, so it's
undone.
Better if we go back. But yeah, I've looked in the eyes of people on stage and thought, all you're thinking about is, are you done with your line yet? Are you, right. No, okay, now I can say my line, and
so if you know it well enough, do you get into a point where you don't even have to think about the line? You just perform it. You just know what's coming. Your body it's almost like a basketball player doesn't think about, he just performs. He just goes out there and does.
Like a musician, like anybody. I compare some of my beginning acting students, because we talk about you have to worry about your given circumstances, which is like the who, what, when, where of the scene, and then what you want from your scene partner, and then what's your obstacle, and what's your emotional background, and all this stuff. And it get totally overwhelmed. And your lines, and making sure the audience can see you, and you don't block somebody, and and I compare it to driving a car when you first start out. I remember
blinker,
back in the Timpview days when the way it was set up was we were driving around. I don't remember if this is the way it was but there was someone in a tower, and there was a radio in the car, and they could talk to you. And I somehow, when I was starting learning to drive, I ended up turning the windshield wipers on, and it was not raining, and I couldn't figure out how to turn them off. And I was just panicking, and his voice was like, there, turn the windshield wipers off. I was like, I don't know,
you just run into the school.
Just mowing over the cones. So, when you're first learning to drive, there's all these elements, but then you get to the point where you drive home and you pull into your garage and go, I don't remember driving. Right. It's also, so I compare it to that, and it's like anything. I mean, you have to keep it up. And right now in my class, we're talking about the fight or flight response, which happens whether or not you're being pursued by a bear or getting up in front of people to speak. The same thing happens to your body. And so techniques you can use so your hand doesn't shake, or sometimes when I got nervous, my side of my face would jiggle, shake, twitch, kind of. And so what do you do to take care of that? So,
or if you're getting mauled by a fake bear.
Or if you're getting mauled by a bear.
Which would be halfway between both scenarios and
That's
break your hand.
Acting and getting mauled by a giant bear hand. I did have my hand. Oh, speaking of hands, I had my hand broken once on stage by an actor who.
You did?
Yeah. Right before we went on stage, he said, I'm just going to try something a little different with the fight choreography. And I went, no, as he went out on stage. And then I had to go out there, and then he broke my hand.
How did he do that?
It was in Wait Until Dark. I don't know if you remember this blind lady being harassed and eventually attacked by this guy. And he was supposed to grab me in one place in my hand, and he grabbed me somewhere else, and I fell against the fridge and broke my hand. And
so how did you recover that? Would you just wow, that was a really realistic scream.
Basically, well, I had so much adrenaline, and because I was thinking the whole time, he just told me he's going to change the fight choreography, which you never, ever do.
Why would you just spring that on you?
he was, I don't know. He was, bless his heart. But he, yeah. So, because in stage, you always have a fight rehearsal, and fight,
Right.
it's always
It's like a
very,
dance, right?
Yeah, totally. Or someone's going to get their eye poked out with a sword or something. So, yeah. But then I had so much adrenaline, it didn't really hurt, but I knew I'd done something because my whole hand sort of went numb. But then it was near the end of the play, so I just fell to the ground and just did some more realistic crying maybe than I had before.
You just stay on the ground.
I just stayed on the ground,
Just whimper through the rest of the play.
crying. So, but there's all sorts of stories like that where something has happened to someone. I just saw a story Ethan Hawke was talking about. He was on stage with an actor, very famous actor, and the guy had a heart attack in the middle, and it was on Broadway, and just fell face forward, and the whole audience thought that it was, that it's what had happened.
Wow.
That he was acting. One of my favorite stories, I think it was my professor Eric Samuelson who told the story. The Passion plays where they depict the life of Christ.
Yes, yeah.
So he said that there was this one where the actor who played Christ got sick, and so they had to put in a last-minute understudy replacement, and they had a pulley system, a fly rig where Christ says, "I now ascend to my Father," and he slowly ascends up, right? The guy that replaced the guy who was sick was much lighter, and I guess they calibrate the weight.
Right.
So he said, and apologies if people find this blasphemous, but it's not. He said, I now ascend to my Father," and he just shot up.
Just rocketed to his father.
To this guy, clobbered his head on a piece of street, got knocked unconscious, and had to be slowly lowered back down, and then the paramedics got him out.
Oh my gosh, that would be...
I know. Amazing.
Now I send him.
Yeah, exactly. And these are stories. There's one where I want to tell that what didn't happen to me. I don't know. They may be urban theater legends, but they're so good. So you just enjoy them for what they're. My other friend said there was this production of West Side Story. So people don't know West Side Story. It's based on Romeo and Juliet. So you've got two rival gangs in '60s New York. One is Hispanic, the other is white, and two people fall in love, and it's Maria and I can't remember this is embarrassing.
I just know there's a lot of snapping and a lot of "Hey, get off my doif," huh?
It's Maria and Tony. Okay, get off my doif. That was.
Hey, get off my doif.
No, that's more guys' songs, but you're close. So. West Side Story is like na 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 na. Yeah, but there's just a lot of snapping. There's a lot of snapping.
I'm right on the snapping.
There's a lot of gangs dancing toward each other, right?
Yes, as they often do.
Anyway, so Maria falls in love with Tony. They can't be together because the gangs hate each other, whatever, racism. So in this production, at the very end of West Side Story, what's supposed to happen, spoiler alert, is that Maria's cousin shoots Tony. And Tony dies, and she holds him in her arms, and she sings that famous song, "There's a Place for Us," that song. Anyway, in this particular production, Tony didn't come on stage. He'd fallen asleep backstage or something. So they're all standing there, and Maria's cousin's got the gun, and, nothing's happening because he's supposed to shoot Tony. Tony's not there. So the orchestra's vamping, they keep playing the same thing over and over again. And finally, he's just not there, and so Maria's cousin just shrugs his shoulders and shoots Maria, the actress. And so she's sort of startled and, well, I guess okay.
You gotta go with it.
Gotta go with it. It's acting. So she falls to the ground. She's, shot. And then Tony finally comes running on stage. Everyone looks at each other.
What happened here?
He cradles her and sings "There's a Place for Us," which I'm sure, I don't know, if I had been in that audience, I think I would have gone, I don't remember it ending that way, but
there's some newspaper review like riveting portrayal of
exactly.
West Side Story reverses gender roles.
That's right. It's so relevant now. It's so relevant.
So relevant.
But again, I so want this story to be true, so
yeah.
I tell it if I believe that it is true.
So what's one of the crazier things that's happened to you on stage?
Other
than someone skipping all those lines.
And someone breaking my hand. I've had stuff like one time I was in this Chekhov play. Chekhov is Russian, very dramatic and tragic. And I was supposed to look at this picture. It was of my dead husband and just and cry and talk about it. The audience couldn't see the picture, so the prop people thought it would be funny to just stick different photos in it every night. So they put like a photo of the clown from It. So I was having to look at it. My husband, just random. One time I had to spend a lot of time in this bed under the covers because someone came into the room and I had to hide it was in a comedy. And the prop people just kept putting more and more stuff into the bed, and so so I put my feet down and I would just it would go clonk, and there would all just random props like candlesticks and stuff, and they just kept filling the bed every night with more and more and more stuff. So I was in this tiny little pocket near the end.
Was there a door that didn't open?
Oh yeah.
I swear.
Oh yes. Oh my goodness, I had forgotten about that. Yes, we were in Three Sisters at BYU, and it was a really elaborate set. It was gorgeous set, but they were kind of fixing things last minute, so like doors would get stuck, doorknobs wouldn't work. And one time, very last scene, there were all these people who had died, the soldiers and the people, and the doors wouldn't open. We were trying to go in through these double doors, and they wouldn't open, and finally the people on the other side were helping us, and they pushed the doors open, and these two giant double doors swung open, and standing there were all these people who were supposed to be dead.
The angels have helped us.
I guess it kind of worked. Russian, tragic. And then let's see what else. Oh, I was in a Shakespeare play at the Globe, and I was in this coffin. That was freaky because I'm claustrophobic. Like Katie and I both, our sister, are very claustrophobic.
And this irrational fear of coffins.
Yeah, being closed up in a coffin, right? But no, it was very perfectly safe, but it was a little weird because I had to get into it off stage and then just kind of be in it for a few minutes before they wheeled me out and just trust they would open it. Anyway, so they open it up and it's Shakespeare, it's all magical, I'm dead, and then they sprinkle this stuff on me and I come back to life. So the people thought it would be funny. One time there were ice chips in it, so they sprinkled it on me. And, I wasn't supposed to react yet because they're supposed to sprinkle it and do this chant. And then one time I think they had fake spiders in there and stuff like that. But one of my favorite ones, this was with Mireille, the woman I was talking about earlier, who was Brad Pitt's wife. We were in a play, in that same Chekhov play. And she's my sister-in-law. She's married into my family, and there's this old servant, this lady who's been with the family for forever, and was our nanny or whatever. She's getting old, and Mireille's character wants her gone. And so we're having this argument, and the lines are supposed to go, she yells at me, she says, she just sleeps and sits around. And then I respond, let her sit around. And then Mireille's supposed to say, let her sit around, she's a servant. So one night she goes, she just sits and sleeps around. And I, without even thinking about it, I just responded and I just said, let her sleep around. And then Mireille goes, let her sleep around. And then there was just this moment where each other went, oh no, this has gone terribly wrong. And so she just went, she's a servant.
Yeah, servants shouldn't do that.
It's just like 85-year-old woman, just hobbling around the stage. So it was a little racy at BYU that night. I saw Mireille, I don't know, a few years ago at a party. It was many years ago, but I brought that up.
Let her sleep around.
Yeah. So those are some of my stories and other people's stories. But that's one of my favorite things, is sitting around with a group of theater people and talking about
telling war
stuff
stories
that's happened on stage. Or when I was in my first big film, the Joseph Smith, Prophet of the Restoration, and long title. And they said, okay, we're going to do this close-up of your face. You're looking through this window, and there's a mob coming, right? And so they're going to be like torches reflected, because we're pioneers, torches reflected in the window and stuff. And I was so used to theater, playing for big audiences. Film is just so close up. They were always saying, be quiet. You're so loud. just calm it.
Shut up, Emmy.
I was used to being, like loud enough to be heard. Anyway, so they said, okay, we'll do this close up of your face, and you're looking out in the window and you see this mob, and you're feeling a lot of pressure because the whole film crew is just like, it's,
it's like right
40 people all staring at you, time is money, the sun is setting. And so there's all this pressure, right, to get it right. And so I had to walk to the window and stop on this marker, and they put a sandbag on where I was supposed to stop so I could feel it with my toe. So that took a couple takes because I kept looking down.
Tripping over the sandbag.
And then I did it, and they were like, cut, way too much. And so so I reset, did it again, cut. Oh, too much. Finally, I don't know, the fourth or fifth take, I was like, I'm a disaster. And the director comes up and puts his arm around me and goes, all I want you to do is this. I just want you to look out the window and open your mouth slightly. So that's what I did. I literally just looked out the window and went, "Meh." And he was perfect. So
there is a mob, man.
This is not the acting that I am used to, which is why I say I would have to. I mean, not that I don't want to be hired for film and television, but I think that my training's in stage. And some people are able to do both, like Meryl Streep, really Kevin Kline. I was about to say Kevin Costner, not Kevin Costner.
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon. All the Kevins. And then there are some people who, like Julia Roberts, I think, did a stage play, and the biggest negative, she got negative reviews, and they were saying we can't hear her. Well, of course not. She's used to being on film where you can just whisper and you just talk like a normal person. In my voice and speech class right now, I'm teaching my students how to talk loudly and clearly for 2 hours and not destroy their throat, destroy their voice. So they're just different. It's a different set of skills,
Interesting. It has been interesting too with this podcast to listen back to myself and realize I always think I'm a great public speaker. I stand in front of crowds. I have so many weird vocal tics and stuff. So I've been trying to weed them all out. I say things and whatever else. I say that a lot. I'll do a big list, and whatever else. And I'll go back and notice. So I catch myself all the time now, even just speaking to people normally, not like doing a podcast or in front of a group of students.
You don't have a Utah accent.
I don't. I could turn one on.
I'm sure we all could.
The mountain.
The real Del.
The real Del.
The real Del. There was
Sell my Bex.
Your Bex.
What a ridiculous accent that has.
It is. Where did it come from?
I don't know. And it's we were born and raised in Provo, the heart of all of Utah, and there'd be like people on your cul-de-sac that had it, and then we didn't. I'm like, we grew up 3 houses away from each other. How come you have this accent and I don't?
I think we had, our dad, English, British mother, I don't know. Do you remember that? I think we've talked about this before, that commercial in Utah, Low Book Sales, and it was a song, and it was Low Book Sales.
Low Book Sales.
Spell it the way it's pronounced in the Utah accent. So
Low Book Sales.
The cells.
It's ridiculous. So with an accent, do you believe that anybody can get accents down, or there's just some people can do them and some people can't?
What's the answer I'm supposed to give as a teacher, and the answer that I really believe?
Okay, so there you gave me the answer then.
I will use the word Dad often used, that he didn't believe in talent, he believed in aptitude. So I will say that there are people who have a much more of an aptitude for just like anything, like music, like I'm discovering my daughter can hear a tune several times and just sit down and play it. Not everybody has that skill. I'm struggle with math. So I think
you've been known to struggle with math in college.
You've been known to struggle with math. I think one of my friends got out of math by claiming he had a math phobia, and they actually let him out of math.
You can probably do that nowadays. You need like a comfort animal in math class or something. A math animal.
Like a little math hedgehog.
Just helps me with math.
Just wanders around the classroom. No, I mean.
Oh my gosh! I forgot my hedgehog. Like right in the test center line.
Many theater folk, I think, have legitimate math phobia, so we block against it. But yeah, I mean, you can teach. What you do to teach a dialect on stage anyway is you learn the phonetic alphabets. You learn this symbol stands for this sound, and then you teach say to someone, okay, here are all the ways that it changes, so that they can look at it phonetically and know the sound. Like in Cockney, the I, like right, would be right. So it's you have
7 diphthong vowels.
Yeah, it's a big old. Yeah, that's a diphthongy dialect.
It's like when people say no in Australia. It took me forever, but it almost has like an R on the end of it. It's like no. It's like, is that an R?
Yeah.
And it's just like 17 vowels, and like we just say no. They go no, and just like take it like crazy places.
and all sorts of rules, like in British, in upper class British, which is called received pronunciation, you have a linking R. So if a word ends with an R and starts with a vowel sound, you put the R in, like put it in, like father on. So you don't say father on, you say father on. You pronounce the R.
Oh, geez. Okay.
It's like that. So lots of rules. I've been teaching dialects right now in my class, and the actors will say, "Do we have to do this for every word?" And yeah, you do.
Yeah, you can't just be British you can't pull a Kevin Costner in
just
Prince of Thieves.
Through. Just,
I always wondered too. It's like everyone must be like, "Hey, we're all trying to do British accents. What's with you?"
No, he's a big star. He doesn't.
He's just like, "Guys, I'm not doing it." The director's like, "Okay."
Hey.
How did that come? We just watched it as a family like a couple weeks ago, and we're just like,
Yeah.
"What?" Just doesn't even try. Like maybe for one scene, they're like, "We'll give it a shot." Or it's like Halle Berry's African accent in X-Men. They're like, And I loved how over the course of the movies, like by the third movie, it's like, nah,
it's gone. Forget it.
We just don't even. You're not African anymore. You're African American. Go.
And you never know what order those scenes were filmed in, so it could be stronger in one scene, not, I mean, I have dialect coached plays where they've said, don't talk to the leads. They don't, because they're, just they're too important or busy, and I'm like, but they're the ones who really need the work,
How long does it take to teach someone a dialect, like for someone to really grasp it?
That's a good question. It really depends on their aptitude, that they can hear it. I was teaching someone South African dialect recently. That was really interesting because some dialects are much more difficult than others. I feel like South African, Australian, those are tricky. Because I think people want to default to British, but it's not. It's got some similarities, but it's not. Like we were looking at one sentence, that's all right, yes. And every single vowel in that changed to something different for South Africa. So it was that's all right, yes.
Yes. I love that. Yes.
That's all right.
They almost have like a rolling R too in South African, don't they?
I'd say it's more of a tapped R, but I mean,
a tapped R. Yeah.
There's a lot of, but it's fun too. I mean, I find dialects fascinating and so fun. But the problem being, the reason I don't dialect coach that much anymore is typically they call you in like, I don't know,
like 2 days before give this guy Australian accent.
And then it's your fault if they can't get it. Yeah. I had one guy who was playing a drug addict, and he was a modern day London, what they call estuary accent. So what most working middle class people in London, the way they speak. And I was brought in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks in. I couldn't understand a thing he was saying, not a word. So I talked to him afterwards, which is delicate because like he doesn't know me, and I'm just showing up and critiquing his work, right?
Right.
And at that point, you're set in your ways. There's not much a dialect coach can do. But I said, I'm having a hard time understanding you. And he said, oh, well, I've been on the same kind of drugs as my character has, and that's just the way people on drugs talk. So
can't argue with that.
That's great, but no one's going to understand, So that's a larger thing about acting too. I have students or actors say, well, I just don't think my character would say this, or I don't think my character would speak this loudly. And I'll say, well, too bad, because the audience can't hear you. So you could be giving an amazing performance, but if we can't hear you, then that's a problem. So yeah, it just depends. But if I sit down with someone and I say, here are all the sound changes, if they can hear them and if they can reproduce them, then they go off and they have to listen to a bunch, because that's the missing component, is the musicality of the dialect, right? You can learn all the Irish sounds and substitutions, but if you don't know that the Irish has a lilt to it and a music, so you say, would you be taking the tea to the mason? They do this thing where they go up on the ends, the inflection goes up a bit. And then of course you get people who just latch onto those things, and then they just sound, the dialect just takes over their whole performance, and it just becomes sort of a character. Yeah, become a leprechaun.
Hey, half of them are for you.
Yeah, so.
So I've actually never showed you this because I don't have to be, uber professional to impress fourth graders, but I have a slide in my school presentation where I talk about doing your own audiobook. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's a bunch of different things you can do with your voices. I said, look, I am not an actor, although now people have to realize that I am now a professional voice actor. I have a product out there that people have bought that I'm
Yes.
not part of the union, or I hired myself to do it. But it is what it is. So, so I have this slide, and I kind of take them around all the characters, and I do all the voices, and I say there's 4 things you can do to change your voice. I say because I need to come up with like 30 voices for an audiobook. And I said you can change your accent, you can change your pitch, you can add a quirk, or you can change your rhythm.
Nice.
And so I take them through all the characters. So like Sam, he's the protagonist. So I said most of the time when adults do kids' voices, like the lady who does Ash Ketchum on Pokemon. So most people don't know he's like a teenage boy. Most people don't know that like a 45-year-old lady does his voice.
Right.
And every time an adult does a kid's voice, they always go really high and then add like tons of vocal fry. So it's like, oh man, I want to be a Pokemon trainer.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't go that hard on Sam, the main protagonist, but Sam is basically like this. He's a little bit higher and just has like, I just tighten kind of the back of the throat and add a little bit of vocal fry. And I said, I don't want it to be crazy different because I don't want it to be over the top. And then I go over to Roanna, and Roanna, the way I wrote this into the book, when he was talking, when Sam meets Roanna, she's this like 14-year-old Scottish Viking kind of mix girl. And I said in the book, she kind of has a Scottish accent, but I said it's kind of like Scottish. So I was like, sweet, it's not Scottish, it's kind of like
Kind
Scottish.
of.
So then when I do the accent,
They're
they're like, well, that's not a Scottish accent. I was like, man, I never said it was. I said it was kind of like a Scottish accent, which is exactly what I deliver to you in the audiobook.
Yeah,
So
totally.
as I do this, I've actually had, when Jill comes to me with me to my presentations, I actually have her film the audience. Because when I go from Sam to Roanna, I had the students stop and clap. It's usually like a reaction when I do Roanna's voice. Some people say I sound like Mrs. Doubtfire, but when so I go from Sam and I go Roanna. I said, I'm not a 14-year-old girl. So what I do is I change the pitch and I do an accent. And I say something like, that's absolutely great there, Sam. What are you doing there? And then the students are like they will recoil, like eyes go wide. And I was like, yes.
You got him. Nothing like an accent.
And then when I kind of go around, like for me, an accent, and again, the way I explain it to people is I say, my sister teaches the accent. I do a caricature of the accent. So if someone were to draw a picture, like me as a character, they'd make me totally bald, they make my forehead ginormous, they make my nose big. And I was like, that doesn't really look like me. But you look at it and go, Mike. Like, you know, right off the bat, because you've exaggerated all my features. And so I was like, that's what I do with accents. I'm just making caricatures. If you want a realistic picture of me, go to someone who can actually draw. So if you want like a realistic Scottish, now it helps me to actually understand some of the vowels. So I'll listen to a lot of, you know, Scottish accents or British accents. But for most of the time, it's just me listening to a cartoon and just recreating the cartoon, which is a recreation of like, like I got one guy, Gideon, and he's like, he's kind of like a Hagrid, which I guess is West Country British accent, which is like, Harry Potter, what are you doing down here, Harry?
Right.
What are you doing at Diagon Alley? I'm just here trading me bits and bobs here.
That's really good.
So, and I love them. I love doing. I wish I had time to. I probably should, because this next book I got to have a whole bunch of new accents. So I want to study more. So how many dialects do you know?
I mean, like that I could speak in, you know. I mean, that I've taught, it's more than that. But I have to brush up, you know. I mean, I feel like there's, you know, the multiple British dialects, Irish, Southern, and then there's Southern, and then there's like Texan, you know, there's the hard R Southern and the soft R. So those, I feel like I can pull those out. I don't really have to think about it too much. I can just grab a monologue or whatever. Like you do. Just grab
like you do. It's going to monologue today.
What my husband says is one of the tragic things about being an actor is it's not really something you can just do on your. People have to give you permission to do it, right? They have to. You can't just like, well, I'm just gonna go in the room and do some Shakespeare, you know, just in my bedroom.
But do you turn it like when I go through the drive-through sometimes with my kids in the car, I'll just turn an accent on. All the time. Like I'll just stay in like a Texas accent and just go way over the top.
Oh.
Every once in a while, it took me a bit of guts to do an Australian accent in Australia, like going up to the drive-thru. But I do it every once in a while just to see if I can hang.
You got a really good ear for it. I mean, there are actors who couldn't do what you do just naturally, you know.
Yeah, I think and it's a lot of it's just I think it's like how Vivi's got an ear for music, right?
Yeah.
You sit down and you just play it. I could sit there in a cartoon and I'd be like, let me give it a shot. And some of them I can't do. I know like Steve, his Gollum is perfect. Steve, our brother, is so good. He's so good. But when I do Gollum, there's something about the way I produce the noise that it limits certain sounds I can make. So when I go, stupid fat hobbits, like I can say that line, but if I try to do like a G sound, it gets caught in the same space and I can't do it.
Right.
And so that's why I usually don't do the Gollum one. But Steve can just speak like Gollum. And I was like, what do you do? How do you produce that same noise?
Yeah.
And free up different parts of your your throat.
Well, you got your soft palate and all that stuff. You know, I've been talking to students lately about who want to make their voice deeper. Right. You know, and how do you do that? And you can, but there's a certain point where you have a specific physiology, and it's just it's not going to happen. There's a voice coach who is classically trained, and she specializes now in coaching heavy metal and death metal guys.
I don't know how they do it. Yeah, how on earth do they do it?
Yeah, and she teaches them how to do it. You know, they were like, I was coughing up blood, and then I met this woman, and now I can scream, and you know, it's all about like support with the diaphragm and all this stuff. So yeah, but I love dialects. They're so fun.
I would love, kind of going back to a point you made a while ago about like maybe like the catharsis of getting up and like screaming. I would love one time in my life to be able to throw my head back and let loose just a guttural roar.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And not like just in my car when I was upset with work. I want to like out in a mountain somewhere on top of a peak. You know, I write those scenes into my book because I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
it's amazing. I was in one play at BYU where in Man for All Seasons where I had to watch my father go to his death by beheading. And the director said, okay, I just want you to fall to the ground and have a nervous breakdown. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And if I was really focusing on what I wanted, my objective in the show, which is to convince my dad to just do what King Henry says so that he'll stay alive. And then I've been fighting for that the whole show, and then I don't get it at the end and I have to watch my father die. I found that I could do it. I could just fall to the ground and lose my mind. And it felt great. It really did. But you have to be careful because you can overly indulge that, right? There was another scene I was rehearsing where my mom and I are trying to convince Dad, you know, just do what the king wants so that he'll let you go and won't chop your head off. And I was really into it, and I was like crying. And I remember I had the thought, it was during rehearsal, I had the thought like, oh, this is going so well. Like I'm crying and it's just so good. And then I realized that everyone was just staring at me and there was silence. And the director said, are you going to say your next line, Emma? And so I've been caught in that thing of just like, this is amazing. I am so good. You know,
checking their watches.
Like, So I have, you know, my students I talk about, listen, emotion is not the same as good acting. You know, it's a lot more interesting to watch someone fight against emotion typically than it is to watch somebody just indulge in it, because it can get very self-indulgent, you know?
Yeah, and I think the reason why I guess you get a lot more concentrated being an actor than you do just watching the movie, but the reason why we like horror movies and horror stories is because we get to experience some of the emotion of that and then survive it.
Right.
Right? So your body responds with adrenaline or with dopamine or all this stuff. And in the end, we're like, and we made it. We made it on the other side. So I can kind of feel, especially in today's world, we're like, you know, it used to be like 95, I don't know if this stat's true, I'm just making it up on the spot, but like a huge percentage of men would have to go run at another man with a sword at one point in their life. We don't really have that anymore, at least on a big portion of the world. So we don't, I don't know, I guess it's probably in our genetic makeup to have something to experience this and to overcome it and to go through it. And in today's society, we just don't run into those scenarios. So we have to kind of fabricate the scenarios and
by watching people kill each other on screen.
Exactly. And cheer.
The ancient Greeks, when I teach theater history, the word, you know, catharsis. So they had a word for you feel this combination of pity and fear for the protagonist, and then you go through this emotional cleansing when you watch something tragic happen, and then you feel better afterward because you've purged those emotions. And so, from the very beginnings of theater, there's this need. Now, is it the most vital thing in our society to have, you know, people like me would society grind to a halt? No, but I think there's a lot of value in entertainment and
Yeah,
lessons.
but in the darkest times of humanity, when, Black Plague, whatever, there's always storytellers. There's
Oh,
always,
yep.
right? They will never go away.
Mystery cycles, and yep, they no, we always exactly. People are dying by the cartloads, and we still had people, entertainers, roving
Right.
bands of musicians, and people were still paying them even though they had no money, and we're largely illiterate populations. That's, I think, really fascinating, is that it's just part of human nature to want to tell stories, to want to act out stories in front of other people. It will never go away, just like live theater hasn't gone away just because there are films now,
Right.
things like this. There's something sacred about, well, sacred, that's a very theatery thing to say, but about sitting in a room with people it will never be that specific group of people again, and you can feel the audience's energy, and that's what I think what keeps actors coming back and doing these things even though they're making no money, and they have to have 4 other jobs or whatever, is just that feeling of collaboration. That's what I miss terribly about being an actor, is that collaboration and that feeling on stage when you're with somebody and it's clicking, and
Right.
and you're sharing that with the audience. Like that's great. It's great.
Awesome. I know we've been here talking, geez, an hour and a half.
Oh,
I would
wow.
say, yeah, I don't want to keep you forever. This is about the length I usually have them, but we could talk forever.
Yeah.
And I will
fun.
definitely have you on more to talk about crazy stories and stuff. It's funny. I'm probably one of the only people I know, although I haven't asked this specific question to people, who some of their biggest regrets from things they didn't do in their youth is I wish I would have wrestled, and I wish I would have tried to be in a play.
You would have been so great at both.
Yeah.
You could have found them somehow.
I could have be wrestling some bear.
You could
Guard my
possibly.
wrist, which is I get a bit of that through the audiobook, because you do have to animate yourself quite a bit.
Sure.
But I have no direction. It's just like me writing. I don't know, I'm just gonna take a crack at this thing and see how it goes. But yeah, it would be a lot of fun. I would be interested to try. I have a buddy just this is totally random, contacted me out of the blue, and he's like, Mike, we're doing a kung fu movie. You want to look over the script and stuff? And kind of, I was like, yes, yes, I do.
That's what you need to do. You need to do film, because it's just like a few days maybe,
I
and
would
it's not
love
like a
to.
play where it's rehearsal for months and then you're in the show, but you need to do, yeah.
I
Figure-
full on. Yeah, I'm going to do something. I don't know how, but I'm going to interview McLean Nelson and his wife
Oh, awesome.
in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to try my hand. I was like, I want to see what I could do,
Hmm.
and I think this would be fun.
Definitely.
Now I don't really have the shackles of trying to be a jock and everything else, and social
The
social
social pressure.
mores of staying away
I
from that stuff.
know. I know. It was, luckily I found my tribe, and, then I didn't have to worry so much about that. But
I tell people that I'm kind of the Deadpool of I don't know if you'll get that reference, of the Thayer siblings. Basically, I'm all somewhat of their powers combined. Like the engineer of Paul, the kind of arguer lawyer of James, kind of
Right.
creative as Katie. Me and Steve are
Right.
basically the same kind of nerd person, and then a bit of the actor of Emily and
bit of the
of Emmy, and yeah, the thespian. So yeah, that's been a struggle for me. It's just trying to do a little bit of everything. But
yeah, sure.
now this part of me has center stage.
You're a Mike of all trades.
Yes. Oh, that's not bad.
Nice.
So thank you, Emmy, for joining me this afternoon.
It was very fun.
Yes. So, yeah. So next, can you
Just
continue teaching,
and
directing?
teaching, and I have great students, and yeah, we'll see. I'm thinking over the next year I'm going to start auditioning again, so we'll see what
That's
happens.
awesome. You gotta get back to writing too, blogging and everything else.
Yeah, I would love to do that too. I want to write a play, so I don't know. I'm starting now, and as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh wow, I don't have all the time in the world, like, I don't know. I'm halfway through my life.
How about
So-
this? Techno Wizard the musical. I can already see it.
Well, we're good.
Hello, Willow. I sometimes to my kids, I will do that kind of Broadway singing.
Mhm. Sure.
What would you do if I was here?
That's pretty good.
I would love to do. Steve did Phantom of the Opera at karaoke and said he just
Oh.
loved it. That's one thing we had. I have never actually done karaoke.
Oh, you're a natural. That would be great.
We needed to go do that when we're in
We
town.
should. You and I should go do karaoke. There
There's a
are
couple
a few.
bucket list items. Karaoke, be in like some sort of play, movie, whatever. I want to try my hand at stand up. I want to do open mic
Oh, mm-hmm.
and try that with no one in the audience that I know in case I absolutely bomb.
Right.
Yeah, there's kind of a bunch of these little bucket list items that I kind of want to do now.
Awesome.
Just make life more interesting.
Can't wait to see what you do next, Mikey.
You as well, eldest of my sisters.
Carry on, as
Yes.
Father would say.
Yes, he would.
Carry on.
All right, Emmy. Thank you very
right.
much. We'll see you
You're
later.
welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye. So there you have it, my conversation with Emmy Thayer Freitas. I'm going to have Emmy back on a lot more in the future. As you can see, she's we could talk forever, and she's very entertaining and very funny and has just 1,000 stories. But I think there's a lot of parallels, and it's interesting now listening to my sister talk about acting. Now that I've done so much writing, there's a lot of parallels between the two crafts, between trying to take a story and then develop a set of skills, a medium in which to convey that story. So an actor's, in some respects, a writer's, you kind of have to act it out in your brain, right? You have to carry around all these different personalities, and you don't have to like come up with their voices, well, unless you're doing an audiobook, and kind of physically portray them through you. You've got to learn words to be able to portray them through the paper. And so you have to do, similarly, you have to get yourself inside people's brains, understand their logic and their backgrounds and their motivations and their desires to be able to portray them realistically to an audience. And so I think I can learn a lot by talking to folks like my sister as far as making my medium more genuine and authentic and moving and powerful. And again, anytime you're so invested in anything, you're going to come up with failures, and through failures, we have entertaining stories. So I'm always one for entertaining stories. I can't wait to see what my sister does next. Love to hear that she's going back to audition again because she's brilliant at what she does. I have a very diverse family. My sister being this dramatic arts professor and actress, and then I've got a brother who's an engineer like me, and I have a brother who's a lawyer. I have a sister who's very, very creative and entrepreneurial, and then my brother is a psychologist. And it's a very cool thing to be surrounded by a lot of similar people that are diversely talented. To grow up around them has been an incredible blessing that I benefit from every day of my life. So anyway, I'm going to take next week off, I believe. It is Thanksgiving week. I will be in Utah. I will not have my computer. I'll have my laptop with me, but not my desktop where I do all my podcast stuff. So I believe I'm going to take a week off, and then I'll probably make up for it. I can crank out a couple more podcast episodes in the coming weeks. But it's a really exciting time leading up to the release of my book on December 10th. And I can't wait to enjoy this holiday season. Last holiday season, I was just neck deep in the middle of a turnaround and didn't really get to enjoy a lot of the lead up and sort of the season around the holidays. So I really am anticipating a fantastic holiday with my family, be able to enjoy not just my immediate family, but my brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews. And it's going to be a great time. So I'm really looking forward to the next few months. A lot of exciting things happening. Just trying to build the momentum, get my name out there, and just try to get my book in front of people, because I know it's a good book. I truly, truly do. Could always be better. I could always be better at my prose, at conveying the story that I have, but I know my story's cool. I love the characters, and I hope you do too. So anyway, that's the podcast. I will catch you probably in 2 weeks when again I make my call to all nerds. So please respond to the call. See you later.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Calling All Nerds. To find out more about Mike, his novels, blog posts, videos, and everything else interesting, go to mike-thayer.com.